Thanks, Sarah. And before Meir jumps in, I just want to name, I love the shout outs, even though I'm in the room. I just want to name the thing that you said when you thought you would be presenting this like revelatory moment to your mom. And she said like, well, yeah, of course, we all saw this coming. And not that that is the same with all of us in this room, but there is something kind of familiar for many of us that when we arrive at even just the curiosity or the question about the rabbinate, there are many around us who support us who go, well, yeah, of course you should be asking that question. I'm so glad you've arrived at it. So I'd just like to name that because I think it's one of the things that does feel similar in many of our experiences. Meir, what brought you to the rabbinate, and what torches were you planning to light?
All right, thanks, Adam. And I want to say about Sarah. She was a couple years ahead of me on the Los Angeles campus, and she was very good at what she does because she asked me out for coffee and got me hooked on community organizing. And I don't know if she had a quota, but she got me. She was really good at it. Very, very talented organizer. So I've already been introduced by name. My folks here call me Rabbi Meir. Believe it or not, that's something that you will think about someday. How do you want people to speak to you? I'll save that for another time as far as why I made that choice. My pronouns are he, him, and his. I identify as a cisgender gay man. And also because it's relevant to my story, I am a person who converted to Judaism as an adult. So to answer the question, I was basically still wet from the mikvah, having had a wonderful experience in all of the things that led me up to deciding to convert, being part of a congregation that was that fed my soul and encouraged me, and I was on this Jewish high. And then I started to feel kind of a coming down from that, which I think is normal. But I realized that that my entire perspective on how I could spend my life changed, and I made an appointment with my rabbi, who had been with me through this whole journey, is a very, very good friend of mine today. And I said, I've got a problem. I'm working as a social worker, and I like to counsel people. I like to teach. I like to manage programs. I'm pretty good with budgets and operations. And I'm just, am not feeling it anymore. And I'm not a spring chicken. So this is really a problem. And he asked me, well, what do you want to do? And I said, I don't know, but I just feel like I want to be Jewish all the time. And so he said, well, teaching and counseling and program management and dealing with boards and all. He goes, that sounds a lot like what I do. That validated what I was feeling. And I began the process that ended up at me applying to HUC and becoming a rabbi. I mention that context because I think it's very common for people to have from a very young age to have a clear idea that they want to be a rabbi, and they have some idea of what that means, often probably a reflection of the experiences they've had with rabbis in their life. And I didn't exactly have it that way. And so there are different ways that we get to the places that we are. So what I imagined doing was, I don't know, teaching and counseling, and I don't know, all these things, these roles that a rabbi plays, but I knew I had to do it. I knew that it was what I was being called to do. So the difference between like what I expected and what is happening, I found out two important things about myself that I think is really important in my rabbinate, which is 3 years and a few months old. And that is first of all, I got some advice from someone who actually was an interim in the congregation that I am serving. And she said, there was a lot of context, doesn't really matter, but she said to me, just love these people and they will be your congregation. And you might say, wow, what does that mean? But basically what I realize is probably the light that I so far have been called to bring, and to be honest is really easy and joyous for me to do, is to form relationships with people in this community and to have them connect with each other and to have them connect with me. And I that seems to lead me to so many beautiful, wonderful things and to opportunities that we have here as a small congregation. So one light that I try to bring is investing in relationships. And the second light that I bring is that I'm committed to this community. We have a small community in Fort Wayne. It's a city of about 250,000 people. That's a medium-sized city. We have a very small Jewish community, and so they've considered the possibility that they might not ever have a rabbi again. And so being able to kind of form this brit that we have, that I'm here with them and they're here with me, has been a light that shines, I think, for all of us here, and it serves as a basis for me to do the real things, the easy tasks and the hard tasks that I do. And I will just say, at least once a week, sometimes more often than that, sometimes a little less often than that, but on average, once a week, I feel like I'm doing something that is exactly why I wanted to be a rabbi. And I feel very blessed by that.
You both know that I'm a big sap. So if people see, but others don't. So if you see me wiping my eyes, it's genuine. Like just as you said, like love these people. I got a little choked up. And I do think that that's so much of what drives all of us. It's just a deep love. Meir, maybe you can answer this next question first. We'll sort of, go back and forth. I'd love to hear, yes, it's been 3 years and change, but it's been a pretty significant 3 years and change. I'd love to hear how the rabbinate has already been changing for you.
Yeah.
And no one is expected to be a prophet here, but, what other changes do you sort of see on the horizon for your rabbinate?
Yeah, things changed. I was a normal 5th-year rabbinical student preparing for ordination, like we always do every class, and without much warning, I found out I ended up getting ordained on my sofa. And so we all know what happened. So I entered the rabbinate. I started my position here July 1st, 2020. And normally when a new rabbi comes to town, I don't know, people have barbecues and little house parties, and it's ways to get to know people in small groups. I had Zoom. And so it's not quite as nice as a barbecue, I'll tell you, but the only way that I had to get to know my congregants, because this congregation was taking a very, and I think appropriately conservative stance in terms of precautions for COVID. So we weren't holding services in the temple and nothing. And so the only way I had to meet people was through Zoom. And of course, we all had Zoom lives, right? So it's just that I happened to be doing that while I was like a brand new rabbi trying to figure out how I was going to, enter this conversation with my congregants. So what I think has changed, and of course, not knowing any better is a wonderful inoculant against like all the stuff that people think is really hard about, kind of post-COVID life. It's just the way it is. So that's helped me a lot. And I think that what we're finding in terms of the lasting kind of the echoes of all of the changes that we had to make for the pandemic that are affecting my rabbinate is, one, people, I think, had a renewed realization of the connections that they really valued with each other. And so that made congregational community, temple life, people realized how important it was to them. And so that's wonderful, right? Because that gives me people who want to do Jewish in our small community. I think also we've had to realize that the way that we are continuing to engage with our community has been forever changed. We're still using Zoom. We spent a lot of money on upgrading our systems, something that would have never been thinkable here. And so we are using media in a way that we never imagined before. And I think the last thing that I'll say is that, as rabbis, we are with people in beautiful and difficult moments in their life. And I was kind of with a community where everyone was having a difficult moment in their life, one way or the other, through COVID. So it was very challenging and very daunting. And I had to learn a lot of things all at the same time, not the least of which was self-care. And so I think that that experience has been very helpful for me in forming good, solid relationships in a relatively short period of time. And I think that that we together as a community, and me as the rabbi, we realize that that we can chart our own path. We don't have to be whatever a traditional Reform congregation is, because the pandemic changed so many things.
Same question, Sarah. No, I mean, I always have things to say, but yeah, please.
It's so funny that your communion made many congregants, like, it's beautiful that they realized how important the congregation was to them, because I feel like in my congregation, in many ways, it's the opposite. And it's kind of being in, so we're in San Francisco. We're the largest congregation in California. Like, I think maybe, are we larger than Wise? I'm not sure. It's 1,800 families. It's huge. And so we have a team of 6 rabbis and 2 cantors and a whole staff and preschool and all of the things. And I think that there are people who are leaning in a lot to community, but there are also a lot of people who are realizing, oh, we can just Zoom into Central Synagogue, or, oh, we can just Google this whatever, or I'll just stream this when I feel like it. And so competing with the ease of convenience, and like we're using technology in a ton of ways too, with streaming and hybrid audience and all of these things. And it's making our work more competitive in an unfortunate way. And it's really making us think a lot about what does a manual mean, and what does a manual bring, and why here instead of just a generic service online. And so that's, I think, honed our thinking a lot as a congregation. Another thing, so that's changed my rabbinate a lot. Another thing that's changed my rabbinate a lot is I became a mom in the last 2 years. And so having a kid has certainly rebalanced the way that I live my life. And also now I'm soon to be a preschool parent, not just the preschool rabbi. And so learning to navigate those personal and public roles has been an ever evolving thing. My daughter just got home from daycare because she has a fever from her flu shot. And another thing that I think surprised me, but also didn't surprise me, is, so as Adam mentioned, I got the master's in nonprofit management, and I cannot recommend that enough. I lean on that degree more every single day than I do on what I learned in rabbinical school. And I actively do rabbi things every day, b'nai mitzvah meetings, weddings, all those things. But the management skills and the ability to work with lay leaders and to do budgets and to supervise people is in many ways more crucial to my success as a rabbi, specifically at a large organization. Though I'm sure, Meir, in other ways, you do those things every single day as well as a solo rabbi. And so I think that surprised me. It both surprised me and didn't surprise me. And I've never been more grateful for my Zellico degree.
This wasn't a planned question, but both of you have these areas of specialization that are quite complementary to the work. Sarah, you just mentioned your degree in Jewish nonprofit management, and I'll just remind others, especially those who are just joining us, that Rabbi Meir also has a degree in social work and was a clinical social worker for many years. So I'm always trying to explain to people, the balance of preparing in the subjects that one studies in rabbinical school, but also trying to find time and energy to commit to the things that also really deeply interest us, that are sometimes adjacent or complementary in your cases. Sometimes it's, carpentry, and it feels really far away. I'm just curious if you have found, either in yourselves or in colleagues, other examples of how that feeds you, and also how it really strengthens your rabbinate to be someone with a diverse set of skills, and not just rabbinic. Sounds like you don't know very much. Rabbinic we are expected to be masters of a great deal of subjects, and we are expected to be historians and understand political theory. We're expected to know a lot, which is not always fair to us. But I'm just curious, are there other, other colleagues or in yourselves, places where you've seen those kinds of skill sets really lift you up, or lift up others?
I mean, I think that, so in addition to the Zellico school, and all of my classmates who have done the Zellico degree have would say similar things, rabbis, non-rabbis. I also think educational training is really key. I was a nationally certified teacher through Teach for America, but all of my colleagues who got the ed degree or added on, I know that program is evolving, but adding on educational training, being a rabbi is a teacher, right? Like that's what it means literally. And knowing how to teach is crucial to being a rabbi. Everything we do is teaching. I've seen many social worker rabbis as well, that really helps. And then I think anyone in my congregation, one of our cantors has a background in musical theater and in like Broadway style type things. And so Arik leans a lot on that background from drama school in his work as a cantor. And those are just the ones off the top of my head that have come up.
What I'd add to that is I think that each one of us who go through the process of rabbinic education, we bring ourselves as a blank slate and as a complete human being who's had whatever set of life experiences we've had, and I think that that for me, in terms of the experiences that lifted me up were the practicum kind of experiences. So places where I could hands-on be serving a community as a rabbi. I'll be really honest. Why wouldn't I be honest? But anyway, those situations are kind of scary sometimes, especially at the beginning. There's nothing like your first High Holy Days, but you get used to those. You realize what you can do, and it builds your confidence. Me having those experiences helped me because the flip side of me being a second career student who converted to Judaism as an adult meant that some things were I had to work really hard in ways that not every rabbinic student needs to, and I did okay. And but the balance of experiences that I could have as a rabbinic student, particularly internships and student pulpits, made a huge difference for me because I was able to get that validation that even though I'm still working really, really hard on Rashi's script, even though I'm working really, really hard on that, I can see what I have to offer, and that was a very, very, very helpful and supportive experience for me during my rabbinic education. And I think that each of us, including all of you as us, we have those things that we lead with, and we have those things that we're maybe challenged by, all of us. And I think the rabbinic education, my experience of it is the school gets to know you as you go through the process, and it's an atmosphere where you're able to excel, where you have those ready to fly, even where you have those abilities, and supported where you're working on the things that you need to learn.
Yeah, thank you both. I also just want to acknowledge, I don't know all of you in this room, but those of you that I know, many of you are in positions of Jewish leadership now, and you're serving your communities or communities that are far from where you grew up already. And that experience is really important, I think, to be bringing into rabbinical school. We don't require people to work directly after undergraduate, but we find that anyone who's had experience really, especially serving others in some capacity, is a great orientation. The other thing I think Alex put in the chat, just something that I wanted to raise up, that Alex, he studied accounting with a focus in project management. And is there any overlap with nonprofit management? Sarah, you might be best able to answer that, but I'll just say those are great skills, and frankly, skills that many of us wish we had. So good on you, first of all. But yeah, what do you think about the overlap with the nonprofit management degree?
Those are awesome skills. Your future employer, congregation or not, will be very happy that you know accounting. Trust me, there are many, many people that I work with today that can't look at spreadsheets to save their life. I think that there would be some overlap, but I also would have a conversation with them like once you're in the school. So for example, when I was in rabbinic school, and the curriculum's evolving a lot, but there were a bunch of educational classes, right, about like how to lesson plan and things like that. And that's one of the benefits of HUC, is having those integrated classes that all of the schools, like the Rhea Hirsch School and the Zellico School, influence the rabbinic school and vice versa. And I went to the director like, hey, this is how to teach a lesson plan. I was trained by the textbook author. Like, could we figure something else out for me, right? And so I actually took an independent study on what are the rabbis' pedagogies of like what are different ways that the rabbis approach teaching students and each other with Rabbi Devorah Weisberg, which was incredible, one of my favorite classes in rabbinical school. But it was because I was exempted out of the generic education class. So I would imagine, Alex, that maybe you wouldn't be in the budgeting 101 class, but there would be something else that you could do that would deepen your knowledge in that regard.
Yeah, I also just want to say, I think the Z School, as we lovingly call it, the Zellico School of Jewish Nonprofit Management, we just like to call it the Z School. It's cute. Also has a real emphasis on organizational change and like transformation of organizations, fundraising, leadership development, both your own, but your staff, lay leadership development. So there would be new skills. And I think those are good examples of what you are not a blank slate when you enter this place. And so to sit down and just have a conversation with the director of the program or the professor teaching that class that's required and say, I think this material is really important and I would like to sort of take it to the next level because I have experience in this. I would say our students that are happiest are the ones who approach this as a dialogue and as an opportunity, and not those who are thinking about just sort of getting credits off of their transcript. I have one more question for you two, and then I want to turn it to the group. I'm already starting to get some questions in the chat. Feel free to drop them to me privately. Feel free to put them in for others to see. But I just wanted to ask, this is a particularly challenging moment for the Jewish people beyond the borders of Israel and Gaza. And I just wanted to sort of ask and surface, what is this moment like for you as rabbis, and how are you able to care for your community and care for yourselves?
I'll go first. Yeah, it's a very difficult time. And I think it goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway. We're having our own experience, each of us, with everyone else having their own experience. And somehow we all need to, we're drawn to each other in this time in community. I think that the challenges, and I don't know that I've mastered any of them yet. This is also raw. It's also new, from October 7th. But one is that every couple of days I learn something about someone in my community, in my congregation, or in the Jewish community in general, about a connection to what's happening right now in Israel, and that I didn't know about. And this is a small city, so it's you really feel it. It's not like you go to a larger New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco. There are a lot of Israelis there, right, to start with. So there's that. There's people have real connections, and there are so many ways that people respond. I have congregants who are grieving. I have I'll say a board member that I was conducting some typical temple business with, who surprised me by being really really irritable. It wasn't about me, and it wasn't about what we were working on. It was about the atmosphere and the personal concerns they have right now. So I think the one thing I'm learning as I go is to be really gentle with people, to try not to be surprised by anything, although we always are surprised sometimes, and also to realize that is goes for me towards myself as well. And those aren't bad ways of being, actually, most of the time. But right now, that is the number one thing I'm seeing. And in our context as a small Jewish community in a very conservative state, it's going to be a long haul for people here in terms of working with this reality that we find ourselves in.
Ditto on all of those things. I think that I've been leaning a lot on my rabbinic colleagues, both at my congregation, because I'm on it's a huge benefit of having a large team, is like being able to be like, hey, I need to tap out today. I need you to cover X, Y, or Z. And like, we're all leaning on each other a lot, but also my classmates, and comparing notes with each other. Hey, what poetry are you sharing at Shabbat services? Oh, you wrote this beautiful thing. Can I use it? what are you droshing on, that type of thing, like the network you form at HUC. I never feel it more deeply than in times of crisis and need, like what we find ourselves in right now. Our congregation is really focusing a lot on pastoral care at the moment, and everyone just kind of needs space opened up for them to process and to ask questions, because the news is really hard to process and can be misleading depending on which news you're reading and at what hour or 5-minute interval. And so I've been doing a lot of like conversations in our religious school and with our teens of like what's going on and what is truth and who is this and what is that and how do you spell this and are we safe in San Francisco, and like kind of holding space for everything in between those questions. Like this morning, literally right before getting on this panel, we have a very vibrant high school scene in San Francisco, and one of the schools has this alumni petition going around today of like a brazenly anti-Semitic BDS, not just normal, like, not the, you know, like a BDS anti-Semitic petition signed by a bunch of alumni, including Jews and including members of our congregation. And so we were kind of going through the petition together as a clergy team this morning and making a list of who signed it, right? Pastorally caring for the people who see the petition and are upset by the petition. And also, oh my God, we have people who signed it and we should probably be in touch with them too, and kind of checking in on what's going on here and their parents and their families and all of those things. It's a complicated time. It's a hard time. And we're kind of going to be in it for the long haul, I fear.
Yeah, thank you both for your answers, but also for, you know, doing the work. I just want to lift up two things that you both sort of brought out for me. The first is, you know, I am no longer serving a particular congregation, but instead I often say, like, you know, you are my congregants. I am here for you. My rabbinate is to serve you, but that also includes the students who are here already and our faculty and the people in our lives. And so I am a resource to all of those people. And in fact, I have 2 children at a local public elementary school. And I reached out to the principal and said, I want you to know that I'm a rabbi and I will not be a source of truth. You know, that's not what I like in the sense of what's happening or what isn't happening, but there are probably teachers, students, families who are struggling, who are scared, who are this or that, and I'd like to be a resource to them. I also, just so you know, because I think it's always important to be connecting people to community, I gave them the name and email of the rabbi who's, you know, 4 blocks from the school who serves the community that the school's in, because I think like that's what we have to do. We have to be kind of putting ourselves out there regardless of our job and do the work. And the other thing is just, Meir, what you said, you know, like really touched me, that people are sensitive right now. And so much of what it means to be a rabbi is to sort of traverse the world with your heart open. And that is a vulnerable place for all of us. And that's why it's really important to have colleagues like the 2 of you that I can call on, and that, you know, that we can call on each other. Woo! Heavy times. I want to lift up some questions that have come in on the chat. Elizabeth, hi Elizabeth, is asking, in particular for you, Meir, that like, what is it like after your conversion? How long did it take you to think about applying to HUC, and what kind of experience were you looking for in order to be better prepared?
I kind of think, looking back on it, that my conversion process began with my first meeting with a Jewish friend, and it continued until I was ordained. I really think that's kind of, looking back on it, it was basically one process. That doesn't happen very often, I think, but that was mine. In terms of getting ready, as I understand the question, like what did it mean to prepare for someone in my situation? So mid-career person, I began studying Hebrew with a private tutor at her kitchen table for 3 years. Lovely, lovely experience. I became more active in my congregation. And I also had the help of my rabbi to make that happen. So I did committee work. I served on the board. I served on the executive committee. So I had opportunities to see inside how a congregation works, which was enormously valuable. I would encourage all of you to take any opportunities for Jewish leadership that come your way. Because you'll learn so much, and you'll help the organization that you are a part of. And I think those are probably the two major areas of preparation that helped me be ready to apply to rabbinical school.
I just want to add something that I really say to all candidates, and maybe applies to this particular question as well, but is really true for everyone who's considering this path. And that is, we think it's really important that you have a sense of commitment to all Jews, not just the Jews that you know, which is hard because there are a lot of us and we're all over the globe, and no community is the same, and geography is challenging and all those things. But I think what that means from where I sit is to try to expose yourself as much as possible to the greater Jewish world, online or in person, but definitely also to explore the Jewish world that's available to you locally. I'm thinking of one particular person that I'm not going to out them in this moment, but who is now a student of ours, who we said, it seems like you have this unbelievably rich Jewish life, but it's only in your congregation. I know your community. There's a conservative synagogue across the street, like spitting distance. Not that we should spit at our neighbors. Across the street. Have you ever been there? No, I have not been there. Have you ever met? Have you ever studied like Torah study? No, I've never done anything there. Okay, I would like you to consider that they too are part of the Jewish people, and you will serve them even if they're not your members or something. So I think that's another thing that we can all be thinking about, is how do we kind of get outside of what we know, not because they're right and you're wrong, or they're authentic and you're inauthentic, but if we're going to be, I think as rabbis, we have to change the barometer of what is knowledgeable, what is experience, and what is the Jewish community. We have another question. Looking back, is there anything you wish you had known before entering rabbinical school or starting your career as a rabbi?
I think that, so I grew up, my aunt was a rabbi as well when I was growing up, and she had a really difficult experience as a congregational rabbi. And so I think part of why it took me longer than it could have to discover I wanted to be a rabbi is because I had a really narrow vision of what does it mean to be a rabbi and what do rabbis do every day. And I think that I am surprised every single day still by what being a rabbi actually means and the scope of what we do, right? Like being professionally Jewish, like what your rabbi said to you, Meir, is really so true, right? About we really hold people at every point in the life cycle, and get to think creatively and program differently. And synagogues are changing, communities are changing, and it's a really exciting time to be in this world. It's a challenging time to be in this world, but it's a really huge opportunity that we all have to build what the next 100 years of Jewish life look like.
And I would just briefly add the surprise, one that I think was pretty significant for me and maybe would be for others, is that I had never had any professional relationship like I've ever had. I've never had an experience like I have with the congregants that I have, or pretty much congregants anywhere. As a social worker, I was pretty clear on boundaries, and perhaps you are in other ways in your life. And there's a very different understanding of boundaries here. Sometimes I have to set boundaries, but actually sometimes it's the universe telling me, no, Meir, you have to let these people closer to you. And that was a big surprise, and it's delightful most of the time.
Yeah, I tell people, especially actually after they're admitted, I say things like, everything you do from now on out is building like a skill set, and more importantly, building habits that are going to follow you into the rabbinate. So if you're not already doing study for yourself, that's just for you, it's not going to come later. You have to build it in, now at this stage. Harish, please.
Hi. So my question is again at Rabbi Meir, because I identify much with his situation, in the sense, even I am a convert. So now I just wanted to ask, did he um, feel like he was at a disadvantage in terms of knowledge of the Jewish faith that people have since childhood? Even whatever minimum it is, even that counts later on. So, like, did he feel that he was at a disadvantage? Though in the States, maybe I don't know, maybe it's easier because here I'm from India, so here the Jewish community is like 4,000 people in 1.4 billion. So yeah, so that's the question. And then how did he cope with the studies?
It's a big question, but I'll respond briefly. Rabbinic education is amazingly comprehensive. So the education that I received prepared me very well. And every rabbi that I know has things they know a lot about and things they don't know much about. And what we learn in our education is how to learn what we need to learn. So I'm asked a question by a congregant, oh, Rabbi, what about blah, 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 blah? Have you ever heard of that tradition? And it's like, well, okay, wow. And I said, no, let's sit down and study together. That's a good answer to have in your back pocket. And the other thing I'd add, and I'll close with that, is it's my belief that every rabbi, particularly during the stage where we're students, rabbinic students, and perhaps early in our careers, we all have moments of imposter syndrome. It's just life. And the way I deal with that is it's a bit of a trite phrase, but fake it till you make it. It's okay. That can be a holy thing, because you're focused on someone and you're doing everything you can, and you use the tools and the relationships that you have to find out what you need to know.
It's a beautiful answer.
Thank you.
I'm just remembering, Moses also was like, not me, right? Like, pick somebody else. So it's deeply ingrained in our DNA to have imposter syndrome, but also to just sort of rise to the occasion, because there's no leader that we need more than the one who actually stands up to take leadership. There was another question in the chat, and I'm recognizing that we're almost at the end of our time. So if we can keep it, as brief as possible, and then I just have a comment before closing. How as a rabbi do you balance tending to your own spiritual needs while holding and leading others through their spiritual experiences? And how did HUC support you in finding that balance or defining that balance?
That is a tough question. I feel like, the 10Q that you send yourself. There's this thing called you send yourself an answer every year to 10 different questions. It's like a little time capsule. And there's always what is one thing you want to explore more next year, or that you need to invest more in? And spirituality is always my answer. 10, 15 years running using that app. It's always oh, this is going to be the year that I finally crack this nut and work on it. So there is no easy answer to this, or at least I have not found an easy answer. And I look forward to learning from hopefully all of you as future colleagues about how to find that balance. I am not a services person. And I think it's important for all of you to hear that there are congregational rabbis who do not like services. And I know that I thought that was taboo and not possible, but there are a lot of us that are not the biggest fans of services. And it's taken me a long time to get comfortable with actually feeling like I am praying at the same time as leading prayer. And I think I'm now 7-8 years out of ordination, and I'm only just now starting to figure out that balance. I don't know when Adam started feeling like it, or Meir, if you have started already. You're a quick study, so I wouldn't be surprised if you're ahead of me in that regard with services. But I think it's really, my congregation tries really hard to make sure that we each have Shabbats off each month. And so that way we can kind of find and fill our own souls with our families and our friends outside of work, because no matter how wonderful you are at services, leading services is different than being in services or than having your own spiritual thing. I watch a lot of sermons from colleagues and friends around the country to kind of learn with the Hartman Institute, Rabbi Bookdahl, Rabbi Timoner. There's some really great luminaries out there that kind of help me fill my spiritual and learning cup and give me the inspiration to continue doing my work every single day. But this is something that's really hard. It's like another element. There's always work-life balance, right? No matter what your professional is. But as a rabbi, there's also spiritual life balance that I feel like HUC gives you some tools to know how to do. And even just naming that it is something you have to balance, I think is an important part.
Ditto to everything Sarah said, except I like to lead services. That's the only difference I have. But yeah, that's sounds like my experience as well. It's very challenging, perhaps all the more so when you're a solo rabbi, because there's not much time for anything. But what I wanted to add is that HUC, it's available for you. There are things you'll be required to do as a student at HUC, which include participation in worship, twice a week, 3 times a week, depends on the campus a little bit. But you have opportunities and requirements in order to learn the things we need to learn as service leaders. But each campus becomes its own beautiful community, and I sort of look at that as filling me up, and so I still have that to draw from, and so I think that the wisdom there is we need to take and create the spiritual experiences that we can, but HUC is remarkable preparation for that. I'm still grateful for that. I still have notes. I still have little pieces of music that people gave me that I use. So.
I look forward to sharing my thoughts on that maybe later this week, because I want to honor that we all have places to be and things to go to next. There was a question in the chat that I maybe I'll spend more time on if you're able to join our sort of Q&A on Thursday, which is only just tomorrow, I realize. How the week flies by. About other opportunities and like how does one actually be a rabbinic student, but also study in the Z School. I myself have an education degree, and though we've made some announcements just yesterday about changes in the School of Education, there will continue to be opportunities for rabbinic and cantorial students to study in the School of Education. That's not the thing. That's not something that's going away. But for the sake of time, I'll just sort of plant that seed. And if you're able to join me tomorrow as we kind of wrap up after Tefillah tomorrow, I look forward to joining you. If not, please continue to be in touch with our team, with our office. I know that there's a lot of us, but we're all here to be helppful. Don't feel like you have to meet all 8 of us. If you feel like you're working with someone that's being really helpful, that's great. But I'm another person that you've now met, and I'm eager to be helpful. Enjoy the rest of your day. I hope all of your people remain safe, and I hope we'll see you tomorrow. I just want to say, again, a really big thank you to 2 very busy people, as you might suspect from what you heard, Rabbi Meir Bargeron in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and Rabbi Sarah Joslow Paris in San Francisco. So grateful to have you as friends and colleagues and with us today.